So I'd actually like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands and the elders, past, present and emerging. In doing so, acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have a deep cultural, spiritual and historical connect to country. Sincerely, thank you. Now, why are we here? We currently have a contract in this space that is expiring middle of next year and soon to go out to tender for replacement. Today, we are going to look at the contract summary, the tender itself, and your feedback. Moving to the next slide. So, what do we seek from you? In terms of the specification, we're looking for feedback of the current content and any new categories, components that need to be included. Do note that when members engage supplier services, more specific details will be provided on work required. We seek your participation and ability to submit a good quality submission. Equally, if you do not wish to tender, your reason would be beneficial for this tender process. Now, lastly, I must highlight the most important thing is your industry experience and input is very much valued. And this is all about you today and getting you on board. The next slide. So the tender on the screen provides an overview of Procurement Australia, the contract overview into the tender itself, how to work under the contract, particularly those unfamiliar with working with us, tender hints, and lastly, any questions. Next slide. So Procurement Australia, there are three parts to our business, but you're speaking to the Procurement Australia branch. Over the next slide, I'm going to give you a history of Procurement Australia. Apologise to those who already are aware of this, but it's good for people who aren't. So Procurement Australia have been running for over 40 years, so we're well oiled. We're a for-profit, initially established by the City of Melbourne and part of a buying group for 14 municipal councils. We grew for a period of time and in 2005 started trading as Procurement Australia. Moving to 2017, Procurement Australia acquired Church Resources, and the following year we established Space Station to offer a flexible office workspace. Today, we have over 24,000 members nationally. We continue to grow and proudly support a variety of businesses and sectors outlined on the screen. Moving to the next slide. Here is a high-level sample of services Procurement Australia provide, from publicly tendered offer contract as discussed today to consultancy and bespoke client contracts. Our service provision is continually growing and sought. Next slide. So you can take comfort that our sourcing process is quality assured and complies with the ISO 9001 and 2015 standard and have so for over 20 years. We are also vigorously audited annually. All parties benefit from our level of quality assurance and ability to leverage off our reputation. Moving on. So we're getting into the nitty-gritty. What are the benefits to our members? Well, some high-level benefits on the screen are ability to save time and resources, providing a broad range of products, flexibility for opt-in to a contract at any time during a contract term. Procurement Australia conduct a compliant process. Important to note, one benefit I just commented on can be attractive enough for members to use Procurement Australia panel. And this, of course, is good for all parties. Now, next slide. Here are some high-level benefits to our suppliers. So similarly to member benefits, our panel reduces the number of RFTs, meaning the time and resources. Our panel reduces the number of work. And also, Procurement Australia sales team have remarkable experience. They work constantly to promote our contracts to members. The sales team have built lengthy relationships with members, and that's built over time. And suppliers have access to Procurement Australia members and can use this information to leverage off own business opportunities. So as you can see, there are a lot of benefits to start. So the proposed tender, here's a quick overview. So the contract name is outlined as we've used previously. This does not mean at all the specification will be the same. Prospective tender is offered for a 3-year term plus an optional period. The initial tender period starts on the 1st of July 2024 and expires on the 30th of June 2027. The tender categories are to be confirmed, and your industry feedback is welcome to address any gaps. Next screen. So in terms of the draft specification, as addressed, they are still under review. I can provide a copy on request if you email myself after this meeting. Please do look at the specification thoroughly, and I value and welcome your feedback up until the 17th of January 2024. So there's a little bit of time there. The briefing is, of course, this is an infomercial briefing opportunity for us, but it's also an opportunity for industry to provide valuable input. Now, I've outlined some questions on the screen. That's a good starting point. If you would consider these and revert back to us, whether via email, on the phone before tender is let, as indicated by 17th of January, that would be extremely grateful. Next slide. So in terms of the tender objectives, you can see the number of objectives to deliver a compliant tender. We're keen to offer panel members, experienced contractors capable of providing the requirements of the specification. We aim to provide a centrally managed standing offer contract that allows for RFQ activity. And lastly, using pre-qualified vendors that can be used by members at any stage of the contract is a highly sought after service. The next slide. So at a high level here, this page outlines the categories of the proposed tender scope. Now, still to be finalised, many of these categories have been utilised in the previous contract because they work, but they are not limited to these. I will now run through each of the 8 proposed categories slide by slide. So do bear with me. Again, you can ask questions at the end of this presentation. So category 1, automotive accessories. You can see we're after the supply and delivery of aftermarket automotive accessories. So they're not included but limited what's on the screen. And we do prefer retailers with storefronts. So over to the next slide. Category 2, automotive spare spare parts, supply and delivery of OEM and aftermarket spare parts. This includes and not limited globes and etc. as listed on the screen. Specialists are considered, and of course, yet again, general retail is preferred with storefronts in the regions tendered. Moving to the next screen. Category 3, automotive batteries. Yet again, supply and delivery of automotive batteries for all vehicle applications, and they are quite broad, as you can see listed on the screen. Manufacturers are preferred, and naturally roadside assistance and other services are sought if you have that available. Environmental policies and practices are very carefully evaluated. Next slide. Nearly there, halfway there. Category 5, fleet management services. So provision of fleet management and or vehicle leasing services. Our members are extremely interested in electrical vehicle, so anything EV related or any associated services or parts for this industry, please speak to this piece where appropriate. Fleet management operators and asset financing specialists preferred. As outlined in the screen, we're looking for a full outsourcing solution, and leasing options also included. So again, towards the end of this briefing, I can supply this PowerPoint so that you don't miss out on any of what I've just discussed. Moving to the next screen. Nearly there. Category 5 is the lubricants, fluids, greases and coolants. So supply and delivery of all these. Manufacturers are preferred yet again. We do carefully evaluate all environmental policies and practices. So moving forward to the next screen. Category 6, tools and workshop consumables. So supply of these for all vehicle applications. Specialist delivery and installation services are sought, and again, specialists will be considered. So highlight whether this is the area you fall in. General retail is preferred with store fronts in the regions tendered. Now, category 7, supply and delivery of tyres. So they're not limited to on-road and off-road applications for various fleet assets. General retail is preferred with storefronts in the regions tendered. We are looking at fitting, disposal, delivery of roadside assist and other services sought. It could be on-site tyre service for the member. Last but not least, we have category 8, which is the vehicle disposal services. So high level there, provision of vehicle disposal services included but not limited to auctions, vehicle transport, storage, and so forth. Again, general retail is preferred with some storefronts in the regions tendered. So that wraps up the current category that we have proposed. Again, anything we have remissed, please revert with your input. It would be grateful. All right, so moving on to how we evaluate an award. So suppliers can tender for any one category or a combination of the categories, and we will evaluate based on these categories. Suppliers can be awarded by state or nationally. To the right of the screen, we have an example of the criteria used to evaluate. So if we look at the first row, the criteria for compliance, we are looking at the sub-criteria of whether or not you comply with insurance, for example. So the schedules that we request from you should provide this information. Moving forward. So the tender structure. Apologies to those who are already familiar with this. This would be like Groundhog Day for you. But for those who are unfamiliar, I'm always here to be able to support the basic information. And we do have our contract in 6 parts, A to F. So the first part, we talk about the information for tenderers. Part B, condition of tender. Part C is the executed deed between Procurement Australia and the tenderer, so that would be the supplier. And Part D is a sub-agreement general conditions of contract. Now, one section for response in the returnable schedules, that's listed in Part F, just moving down. It does have an opportunity for tenderers to address where you don't agree with any of the general conditions. So they can be listed as a non-compliance. If there's anything you're unsure of, I'm actually happy to take this offline. So moving down to Part E, the specifications. Yet again, in draft, copy is available on request. And Part F is when you have to return these schedules populated to be able to ensure there's a partly compliant tender. Moving to the next slide. Returnable schedules. It does look quite overwhelming, but to those who are familiar, some of these are just a signature. It's important to read these comprehensively and ensure that they're answered in totality. Please don't put not applicable in any of these schedules, because I do want you to put your best foot forward. I know you have the industry experience and I'd love it to be spelt out on the page. So moving forward to the next page. Tender process. So my name is Elise Anderson, as you know, so I'm the tender manager, and this is my role. So at a high level, to manage the tender event, call and close the tender, and summarise and evaluate the tender submissions, and eventually develop a contract award recommendation. Slide. So this gives you a very good snapshot of who is involved in the tender and contract responsibilities. So you can see from the start to award, call and tender is Procurement Australia, evaluate tender, contract award decision, and then finally we get to execute contract, and that is obviously engaged between Procurement Australia and any successful suppliers. And then we move to issue purchase orders. That's with participating members. And as you can see through this screen, then eventually what we do, and that's part of my role, is to monitor contract performance. Again, happy to take questions today or offline up until tender let. Next screen. So here we go. We've got the tender timetable. We've kicked off one row. We've got industry briefing down today, and then we're looking to advertise the actual tender on the 31st of January. Tender close, you'll get about a month. So you'll see tender close 28th of February. Board of contracts, we're looking at getting that done and dusted by the 30th of April. And we do want to see this started by the 1st of July 2024. So it seems like a lot of time under the belt, but we do take a comprehensive analysis of and appreciate the work that you put into your submissions. So moving to the next slide. So the tender download and clarifications. This is really important for those who are not familiar with submitting a tender. It is all conducted on the TenderLink website. So you'll need to be able to download the documents through TenderLink. Also, it's about lodging your documents through TenderLink. Any questions that you have in relation to the documents, they can only be submitted through the online forum. Now, this does close a week before the tender closes, and I've got the date there. Last date for questions is the 21st of February 2024. I can't take questions by email. They all have to go through TenderLink to respect everybody that puts in a submission. Be mindful though to keep an eye out, because if any event we need to at our end post an addendum, it will be issued through TenderLink up until probably the day prior of the tender closing. I hope that's clear. So we'll move on to the next screen. So tender responses, we're seeking tenderers to submit all completed schedules and sign where appropriate. Kindly submit your documents in the requested format. Do give yourself enough time to lodge your submission and not last minute to create unnecessary stress and potentially an incomplete submission. I want you to have the best opportunity. So that's quite straightforward. So moving to the next slide. The Procurement Australia income model. So pursuant to the contractor will be required to pay a Procurement Australia rebate in accordance with the deed. And the rebate is defined as follows, but the actual percentage will be confirmed in the tender documents. Do note that you're required to, or suppliers are required to incorporate the rebate into their financial responses. So keep a real good eye on that one. I hope that helps. Again, revert if you've got any more questions. Moving to the next slide. How to work under the contract. Now, you can see here members opt-in. So what does that look like? We have a member that will opt in via our Procurement Australia gateway system, and usually you'll get an email. And then, of course, once they opt in, hopefully that leads to work and services engaged between yourself and the member. So there's a little bit more into that, but once you're awarded, you'll get support from our team. Next slide. So again, bit of a diagram of the engagement and invoicing process. You can see from the very left-hand side. So Procurement Australia signs the contract with the supplier. For example, if it was yourself, the member opts in, as I just said, and they raise their purchase order. And of course, the supplier delivers the work and so forth, invoices the member. Need to report any sales to Procurement Australia. And then of course, PA invoices suppliers, and then the rebate is paid. So it's a very high level diagram. Again, I'll make this slide available after. Next slide. So tender hints. Apologies to those that are well oiled in this space, but there's always a good reminder what we're looking for. Please answer each question, because I don't know you. Please, do not refer to attachment or not applicable. Just clearly articulate responses and demonstrate your expertise, as though I have absolutely no, because I don't, any idea of your business. And And just respecting that I might, from my previous work, understand some fleet abbreviations, assume I absolutely know nothing. So no acronyms and abbreviations will be graciously appreciated, and use charts and numbers only when suitable. So moving to the next slide. So what's next? I'll have the RFT available for download from the 31st of January. So that's when it's let. And again, I know I've said this probably a few times, do register TenderLink prior to downloading the RFT. Kindly refer to my contact details on the screen. So you'll see my direct number and my email. Nearly there, next screen. So here we are at question time. I hope I've got some questions in the chat, but if I could just open it up to the floor, if anybody wants to take themselves off mute, if I can't answer them today, I'll definitely revert back with a Q&A email. Please, I encourage you, implore you to contact myself. You can do so via email or phone up until the tender let period. This is a great opportunity and your industry experience is highly valued. Thank you for your time.